When you take a policeman that wears white gloves directing traffic and you mix it with a Karate Kid black belt manufacturer making the belts, and then mix that against a young 12-year-old intelligent savant that's just about to graduate with a doctorate degree. This is Robby, and project management, people management is his expertise.
And that's actually one of our competitive strengths, is that we're not an American company or a Dutch company that is pushing an American or Dutch product to the whole world because the markets are so different. We have a uniquely Chinese company in China, and we have a uniquely French company in France. We have a uniquely American company in the US. That's one of our big strengths.
I'm Chika Eloy, and this is a conversation designed for BCD people with BCD people. On this show, we're running through the diverse cultures of talent at BCD Travel, and we're showcasing our most confident self-colleagues. So come on, let's go have some fun as we explore the different functions, spaces, faces, and the complexities across our world of BCD.
Well, welcome back to another wonderful week of the world of BCD. To all of our listeners out there that have been supporting and sharing on Chatter and sharing with their team, we're getting a lot of great feedback to this call. And yet again today, we have a very, very special guest. I would like to welcome to the call Mr. Robby Wisnewski. Welcome, Robby.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I don't know why it feels like you should be like this WWF wrestler running out onto the mat right now.
Let's not picture that. That's going to scare people away.
Well, Robby, let me pass you the microphone. I know that you're part of the GPMO organization, and maybe you can speak to what is it that you do and maybe what the work is that the GPMO does, including and remembering that all of our listeners may not have interacted with your organization in the past.
Sure. So on a very, very high level, the GPMO stands for Global Project Management Organization, and we are responsible for everything project related. That's a client wants to change something with their setup, they want to implement an OBT, we acquire a business in Poland and want to integrate that with our existing business. It's everything in between those. And then within the GPMO, you've got some teams that focus on internal projects, some teams that focus on external projects, and then one team that kind of sits at the crossroads of all of that and directs projects to where they need to go, directs projects to the right resources, to the right leaders, to the right teams. That's what we would call shared services, and that's actually where I sit. It's kind of the crossroads of everything project related within BCD Travel.
Very cool. So the shared services team that you sit in, you're like the person that catches and passes. Are you actually a project manager yourself?
I am becoming a project manager myself on Monday. I have managed the European and APAC teams for shared services, and I'm transitioning into a senior project manager role to take on a specific project. So I'll be wearing a double hat where I'll keep some part of my role within shared services and then take on this project in parallel.
Fantastic. Congratulations on the new season approaching. And where are you based, Robby?
I am based in Montpellier, France, but I am American. I've only lived here about 7 years, hence the American accent.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was about to say I'm a little confused. So GPMO, Robby, when I think as just an individual contributor, part of a separate function within BCD, I work day to day on a number of projects. Mm-hmm. Could you break down for us who are not project managers, like what does a project manager do if I've never worked with one before?
Yeah, so a project manager is going to coordinate a group of resources to accomplish a defined set of objectives. I know that sounds like I just read a book. What that means is a project manager is going to go from A to B. And the important thing is it's something that ends. Operations keeps going, projects end at a specific time. And so in your role, you probably have projects and you've got maybe 2 or 3 resources that work on them or more, who knows. The value add that the GPMO brings is that we coordinate the resources for a project across multiple teams. So for example, if ICT or Performance Solutions or any team within BC Travel have their own internal projects, there's no reason necessarily, and again, we can always happy to support, but there's not necessarily a reason to get the GPMO involved. The GPMO gets involved when there's a lot of resources, when it's a complex project, when you need input from multiple teams that have different specialties and all coordinated to one specific goal, that's where we would come in. And that can be for your client, that could be for moving a data center, that could be for developing the new functionality in TripSource, that could be anything and everything, actually.
Right, I'm sure you've touched almost every organization within BCD to help, as well as to potentially say no. You can do that on your own too, yeah?
Well, it's a good point, because one of the most interesting things that I have found, not just so much about GPMO, but within PSS specifically, our team, is that we do interact with everybody in the organization, in every country and in every region. We have to be up to speed with what's happening in EMEA, with what's happening in APAC, with new products that are being rolled out to clients in specific markets. We're aware of changes that even partners are making, like Amadeus and Concur. And we really get to keep our finger on not only the heartbeat of the company, but the heartbeat of the industry,
Wow.
because that's driving a lot of what we do.
PSS stands for?
Project Shared Services.
I love the take that you have to interact with a lot of different functions, or all the different functions. Mm-hmm. So let's pretend you approached me and you needed my help in my function. How do you do that without necessarily having a direct tied to me? How do you influence, I guess that's where I'm moving, how do you influence me to help you in a project when it may not be in my scope?
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends on the project, and it depends on the situation, but we have two primary processes. If a client is asking for a project, there are specific resource pools throughout the world that that assign resources to projects, and we go through those channels. We have channels set up and people within those teams that assign people and work on the scope with us and whatnot. We can go through all that. When it comes to these internal projects, the bigger internal projects, so we have a bi-weekly meeting with some of our global leaders at the VP and the SVP level, where they review all of the project requests. For example, Christian Dahl, if I needed resources from HR, it would go through Christian, and he would assign somebody if he thought the project was a good idea.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now shifting gears for a second, or maybe even changing belts. I've heard this phrase or this label out there, black belt in the Six Sigma. What could you maybe for us that don't understand project management, what is that? Do you guys do that? Do you guys like karate chop people? I mean, I know that's ignorant.
We
but
do
at the same
karate
time,
chop people, actually. No,
yeah?
We do actually. If we don't like your project, we'll karate chop you. It's funny. It's actually a misnomer, because Six Sigma was developed initially by Toyota in Japan, and it's an operations process. Six Sigma refers to the level of quality in operational deliverables, and it's something like 99.99999% perfect. And Toyota, defined that and marketed it and whatnot, and it's become a very well-known certification, but it's specific to operations.
Yeah.
Project management is distinctly different from operations in that we start something and then we stop it. So Six Sigma is going to look at how can we repeat the same process perfectly over and over and over and over and over again. Project management is going to do the opposite. How can we do this project one time and then stop?
But you do have separate parts of your organization that do repeat projects, even though there's a start and stop. One part of your organization does repeats, and then the other one's one-off, right?
Yeah, perfect example. So a client asks to implement a new OBT. We've done that thousands of times. We know exactly what needs to happen for an OBT, but every OBT is configured differently. Every client has different needs. And so, yes, there are operational processes for that. And I'm sure I'm not Six Sigma certified, so
that's okay. We all asked on this call right now.
maybe I'm misrepresenting them, but my understanding would be that the concepts from Six Sigma there's a lot that could be applied, but each project is so different that you wouldn't expect the exact same result to a 99.99999% consistency.
Coming back to the idea of just the amount of exposure you have to the wider business, Robby, you and your GPMO team, what do you foresee in your exposure some of the big challenges BCD is going to face in the future?
It's interesting to look at what is happening in the industry, and not just in our industry, but outside of our industry, because our travelers they've got an iPhone and an Android phone full of a bunch of apps that are setting their expectations for the service level that we're going to give them, even if they're not even travel apps. And I think one of the things that's difficult in the travel industry is how complex it is. There's very few other industries that have the equivalent of a GDS and have equivalent of a TMC and all of the different partners. If you map out our business model, it's extraordinarily complex. And then on top of it, within BCD Travel, our strategy has been to acquire companies all over the world. And that's actually one of our competitive strengths, is that we're not an American company or a Dutch company that is pushing an American or Dutch product to the whole world because the markets are so different. We have a uniquely Chinese company in China, and we have a uniquely French company in France. We have a uniquely American company in the US. That's one of our big strengths. But it also adds an enormous amount of complexity to the organization. I think one of the things that we're going to continue to work on and to improve on is managing that complexity strategically, in the sense that we have to be able to leverage it. The complexity is there; it's not going away. So how do we leverage that to make to create a seamless experience for our clients, to have a seamless experience for our travelers, so the travel manager and the travelers, that competes with the experience they're getting with Netflix, that they're getting with Spotify, that they're getting with Amazon and all these other apps that are on their phone? How can we create a truly digital end-to-end experience with them so that when they call up their agent, what the agent has in front of them is similar or exactly the same as what they have on their app? Because that's what happens with the other companies that they're interacting with. And that, in our industry, that's an extraordinarily complex task to achieve. And I think the TMC that can achieve that is going to be very successful. And frankly, I think we're on our way within BCD Travel.
Gosh, that's exciting news. And if you're a listener right now, if you're anything like me, I'm sitting here going, I wish I could articulate that as well as Robby just did. Thank you. That was really clear and very well said. Speaking of articulation, you have 4 people that report to you, or you work with 4 people, 4 direct reports. Based on Shelley's episode last week, we got a number of pieces of feedback saying that's the stuff we want to hear. Can you maybe speak to us a little about, is there a hat that you've been wearing or a set of glasses you've been putting on as a manager that's been really intentional working with your people of late?
I read a quote recently by Steve Jobs, and I know Steve Jobs quotes are a dime a dozen. It's really trendy to quote Steve Jobs, but I actually like this one. And he said, we don't hire people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people that we believe in for them to tell us what to do, because they're the experts in what they do. That's kind of the way I see, first of all, leadership, but that way I would also see effective management is we recruit people, I recruit people, and I recruit people that I think are brilliant, that I think are trustworthy, that I think are going to do a great job, and therefore they're the closest to the work, and I want them to tell me what they need in order for them to be successful. I'm not going to come to them and tell them every detail of what they need to do.
That's really fascinating when you just started speaking about the way that you recruit people. Robby, if I was to kind of narrow it down, would you hire for character or competence first in your organization?
Well, certainly character, but I wouldn't want to compromise on competency either. When I interview people, there's 3 things that I'm looking for, and I focus my questioning on ways that I can pursue. I don't ask the questions directly, but I want to understand if the people have these 3 elements, and if they do have those 3 elements, they're probably going to be a good choice. First is curiosity. I can't make anybody curious, and there's an enormous amount of things that we need to understand and learn within our team. And as soon as we learn them, we got to learn more because things change. So I'm looking for people that are curious, that are wanting to learn more and wanting to scratch the surface and dig a little bit. I'm also looking for people that have grit, but people that are motivated and are going to push hard for themselves, that they don't need somebody else to push them, but they're already self-motivated, and they might even need me to slow them down so they don't work all weekend or something, or that they don't focus too much on one specific thing. I'm looking for curiosity, for grit, and ideally within our context, experience within the travel industry. Sometimes there's a need to I'm going to put in a caveat. Sometimes there's a need to interact with people and recruit people that are outside the travel industry that can come in and say, what are you doing? In this industry, we've already solved that problem 10 years ago. That's really key. But many times I'm looking for people that already have a foundation level, either within the travel industry or project management, that we can springboard off of based on their grit and their curiosity.
Sensational yet again, Robby. And I have one last business question for you around the two words value proposition. When you hear those two words value proposition, what comes to your mind for your work and you?
I'm going to answer that very specific to what we do on a day-to-day basis. And if you think about it, put yourself in the shoes of John Snyder or anybody that owns a business. You've got your business running, but at the same time, there's things that always have to be changing. It's one of our core values at BC Travel is that we're ready for change, we embrace change, and we go with change and we drive change. But you have to have some kind of visibility on all of the non-standard project work that's going on. And my team, PSS, and everybody that works within PSS, we are the best positioned team within the company to give that visibility. So not only are we the front door to all projects where we can take your idea, we can take your strategy, we can take your very, very clearly defined tool that you want to implement for a customer, or not so clearly defined, and we can help you work through that. We can take that and kick it off into a project and hand it over to a project manager. We can do that, but where I think we add the most value is then taking all of that data that we're getting from all these different channels and providing that visibility to our senior leaders to make strategic decisions quickly. We can say, these projects are accomplishing this, these projects are accomplishing this. This is the state of the business for everything that's project related. And I think our industry and our company needs, and I think everybody would agree with this, we need to be able to make good decisions quickly. And the best way to do that is with data and with visibility. And I think PSS is the best positioned team within the company to be able to provide that visibility to facilitate those quick, good decisions.
Thank you, Robby, for representing PSS, GPMO, and I'm sure, and a big shout out to all of our homies and homesses in GPMO organizations around the world. Robby, time to move on to one of my favorite segments of the podcast. And as we close, I ask you 5 really rapid fire questions, and you do your best with a yes or no or a one-word answer to give me the answer. Question number 1, Robby, if there was a hair that you found in your bowl of soup at a restaurant, knowing that both of us have so much hair, would you return it? Because it may not be yours.
Most likely, yes.
Question number 2, what is the most boring thing ever?
Anything that's not intellectually engaging bores me to death, and I usually do it poorly.
Speaking of which, question number 3, Robby, would you ever go to a movie alone?
I don't think so. Not out of principle, but more out of interest.
And question number 4, what is a country that you would be okay if you never visited it in your life?
Russia.
And question number 5, I'm going to leave that one right there. Question number 5 for all of our Russian listeners. What is the best and most favorite thing for you working at BCD Travel?
The visibility that we have within the company, what we can see happening on a daily basis.
Robby, we appreciate your time this week. Thank you so much for giving us an insight into your organization. You know, you're the very first GPMO person that we have, and I look forward to hopefully expanding now and getting really deeper and thicker into some of the work that you guys are doing. Thank you again for sharing, and to all of our listeners, feel free. I'm going to include all of Robby's contact information in the show notes, and I'm sure he would welcome any questions and or any comments and or any cool people to join his team in the coming future. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on A World of BCD.